Rodger, I know you've been giving a lot of thought to imagination as a theological category. Tell me what you mean by an imagination and how is it a theological vocabulary word?
Yeah, so I told you earlier, one of the questions in my own tradition called Presbyterian that I love the most, ordination questions that we ask of persons we ordain, is will you serve the people with energy, intelligence, imagination, and love? I'm so grateful that the writers of that liturgy put the word imagination in there, frankly because I'm a little worried these days that we lack a theological imagination. I think over and over again, one of the things that makes us created in the image of God, uniquely as beings on the face of the earth, is that God instills in humankind the ability to imagine. That is, the ability to move beyond whatever the concrete limitations are of our lives, and to think thoughts that take us into distant places that we may never have dreamed before. That's an imagination. And a theological imagination is one that is attentive to how God is at work in the world. Now, I've been working on a theorist, a philosopher named Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Coleridge talks about a primary and a secondary imagination. He says the primary imagination is what human beings possess to be able to see God at work in the world. And then what I appreciate about his theory is he calls for a secondary imagination. And Coleridge says a secondary imagination is that which enables us to take that experience of God and then somehow share it with others, to give life, either story or art or dance or music, to give shape and form to that experience of God. That's a secondary imagination piece. I've been intrigued by that and looking at that in a variety of ways in terms of youth ministry. I think a task of imagination, a theological imagination, is to help our young people see how God is at work in the world. Because it is true that God is at work in ways that we can't even imagine, but we have to be able to learn to see it. I think we train our young people to look around and see it. But then, after we experience God in some way, we have to invite them, cajole them, encourage them, demand of them that they turn it around and show us, tell us. Give us a poem, give us a dance, give us a sermon. Tell us how it is that they have seen God, so that that secondary imagination kicks in, and then we, as the body of Christ, benefit from how they see God at work in the world. So several years ago, I was with a group of young people in New York City, and they came from all over the country, and we were planning a major conference, a national conference. And we had set aside one day, sort of just to walk around the city and explore. And a number of the young people had never been to New York City before. There was one young man named Kirk, who was this huge, huge kid from Montana. And when he got off the plane, and I saw him in baggage claim, Kirk from Montana had this huge cowboy hat on, and a cowboy shirt and cowboy jeans and boots, and I thought, oh, good grief, Kirk. And people were staring at him when we were there, LaGuardia picking up luggage. We went out walking that day, and Kirk was in his cowboy outfit, and he confided in me and said, you know, Rodger, I'm not sure this is a good idea, because I hear people in New York City are mean and scary. And I said, Kirk, actually, you know, you're a big white boy from Montana. It'll be okay. They probably have more reason to be afraid of you than anything else. Well, we had a great day. We had a lot of fun. Statue of Liberty stuff, Ellis Island, it was a great day. Before we went back to our guest house where we were staying, we wanted to run in, some people wanted to run into Bloomingdale's on the Upper East Side, at least to get a bag that said Bloomingdale's on it. Well, I'm not much of a shopper, and so I said, you know, I'll just stay out here on Lexington Avenue. Anybody else who wants to go in, but could you be back here in 20 minutes, 30 minutes or so, and we'll be waiting for you. Well, Kirk didn't go in either. He stood next to me, a bunch of other, so we sit outside, we're just waiting there. Well, Lexington Avenue, you know, is all these lanes going downtown. And there was an older adult woman who was crossing the street. And I was watching her, and she had a walker. She had a 4-prong walker, and she was making her way across the street. And I thought, oh, this lady's not going to make it before that light turns green, and suddenly all of these yellow cabs are going to come zooming down. I wasn't afraid they were going to hit her, but I thought for sure, if she doesn't get to this side, she'll be trapped in the middle with some cabs honking at her and others zooming by on both sides, and she'll just have to stand there, which is scary enough as it is. Before I could do anything, sure enough, the light turned green and these cabs started coming down. This young man, who we didn't even notice until then, who was across the street, he was a sanitation worker and had this huge truck, and he was driving on that side of Lexington Avenue going downtown, stopping and emptying all of the public garbage cans there. Well, he had this bright orange jumpsuit and this yellow reflective vest. Handsome, handsome African-American man. He jumps out of his truck, stands in front of this woman, and does this, and walks with her across the lanes to get her safely to our side of Lexington Avenue. And we started cheering for him when they made it across. And what I remember is he looked around, didn't know why we were cheering, and then we were saying, yeah, you, buddy, you were great. And he bowed to us and laughed and waved at us. The light turned green again, so he was able to go back across and get in his truck, and we were waving at him, and he drove downtown. Well, that night at devotional, we were talking about the day, and Kirk said to the group, I saw God today in New York City. And we're all, what? And he said, God is this handsome black guy in a bright orange New York City sanitation suit with a yellow reflective vest. I saw God today in New York City. That's Coleridge's primary imagination. He helped us all see how God is at work in the world. But then the cool thing is, when Kirk got back to Montana, he ended up developing this rap and writing this rap and sent it to me on a CD. Now, I'm not the best judge of rap music, but I will say that I know pretty good rap and I know pretty bad rap, and this white kid, Presbyterian from Montana, it wasn't a great rap song. But what I loved about it was he was telling the story of seeing God in New York City, and he was engaging his secondary imagination. What I hope is that we as church leaders, pastors, youth leaders, parents, caregivers, what I hope is that we encourage our young people to see God at work in the world, and then to turn around and share it with us in ways that communicate the gospel and tell us that God is still alive.